All right, Max, what do we got today? Today, a very cool and interesting book, Toxic Tropics. This book actually has four different people contributing. We have the writer, artist, the color, photography, because there's photography in this book, as well as translation from French and designing and lettering. But we follow Jessica, who I believe I think this is. I looked up how to pronounce Zouble, which has a Z in front of it. So I think this would be Oublie in French. So Jessica Oublie, I think. And apologies if I butchered that. I couldn't find how to pronounce it. Anyway, what is this story about? This is a cool book, taking a big step back. Reading around the world. Two things I love about this book. First off, this is from the West French Indies, or they also call it what is it called here? French Antilles region, which is like several different areas, but it's predominantly Guadeloupe and Martinique, which never read a book from this region, so cool. Second reason this is pretty cool is, unlike so many of these other books, which is, we get, I'm starting to tag these two by different categories, but there's things about war, immigration, there's things about insurrections, slavery, economics, political violence, authoritarianism, food, family. This one uniquely really is about it is about family a bit. This character has family in Guadeloupe, but the real story here is environmental, which is cool. So this is really about an environmental disaster, where essentially chemicals have infected this entire region. It is polluted, and there's not a necessary way out of it exactly. So it's really following this story of just how did this happen, how many areas it's pervaded in life, so really interesting cross section. Haven't had an environmental book. Let me jump directly into our patented scoring system. So we'll see here that this book does have some highs as well as some lows. So we'll get to that. First off, character-wise, as I mentioned already, Jessica is our main character. We follow her. She's self-narrating this whole book. The book starts off with her visiting family in Guadeloupe. So you get to meet a bit of her family. You get lots of dinner table things, and you really follow her throughout this journey, understanding kind of the issues where I think it's pronounced Keepone, but basically where this region continued to use some extremely bad pesticides that ended up bleeding into everything, rivers. There's some cool stuff. I'm showing sort of the art ahead of time, but this impacted just so many different people in this region. A cool thing this book does too on the character side, because Jessica is this narrator that we follow throughout, but we also get these slice of life real human beings as well. So you can see up here, this is a photo of someone that she's talking to, a cartoonified version. This guy was a shrimp guy in the rivers, I believe. You see other people that are fishermen. You speak to other people who were gardeners diagnosed with cancer. So you get a cool smattering of real world characters that are directly impacted how they're making money for their family, their livelihood, or their direct health. So the characters, they both hit and don't hit at the same time. I think the 6 out of 10 is just, there is, we'll get into this later, the downside of this book by far is the readability. Sort of bleeds over a little bit into the character score. For what I got through, I just, there's so many characters, so many historians that you're being thrown at. This is, a lot, I think snippets of some of these people's stories will stick in my mind, but I think that there are so many different facets of the problem here they cut into, and almost various folks that are emblematic of some of the problems that I liked all the characters, and I love the humanity shown through them, they almost don't get to shine enough, and there's too many characters in this book to like fully invest, I guess. So maybe this is a less is more type problem. But anyway, overall, Jessica's the main character. She like narrates the whole thing. You get to meet lots of real world people that are intersected with this problem. Real world photography, real world. I just think that's really authentic and interesting. So overall, strong. The art I gave like a 5. Like I think like the use of color is nice. There's some cool like maps. They try to include some stuff that feels like science-y at times. They have some good like some pretty shots of some of the scenery. It didn't blow me away, but like, and I don't think there were too many things that I thought was like wholly unique. Like they do some fun things during some of their sciencey explanations where they take some interesting artistic directions. But overall, good coloring. Style is, I think strong enough. It doesn't like wow me completely, but I think it's like solid, so I think pretty much right at a 5. History and culture, I gave it a 7. You do you get so much information about these problems. You get kind of like old school interviews with people talking about the risks or lack thereof of this chemical before it started to be a problem. Again, I showed this page already, but you get some of the visuals of how it has like spread throughout the globe, in particular this region. You get, again, at the risk of like too much information, things about like how it travels through plants into the soil, how they count the dead to figure out the risks of the problem. So if you wanted to learn about all of the various angles, political figures involved with this issue, you're going to learn it. You're going to learn a whole lot if you read this entire book, which takes us to the crux of this. A big part of why I'm interested in this is like I'm fascinated with other cultures. I love the ideas of graphic novels as a medium to learn about things, and I really want, I think it's fun to highlight the ones in particular that do such a good job with the art or the characters or some of the cultural things that really make it come alive in the form of a graphic novel. Definitely the downside of this one, and this is like the second book I've read, I had to give this a readability of 1 because I tried several times, but boy, this book is dense. It's 200 pages, and I'll just share like this page alone. There's just blocks and blocks of text, and I don't think I've stood up and grabbed the book yet, but I just want to show kind of comparatively one of the challenges for me too. So this book is again much closer to what it feels like a textbook or should be. There's so much text on here that it's almost like reading a full-on novel. And kind of as a comparison, so this is a beautiful Bible called the Word on Fire Bible. This is the Gospels, so kind of the big hits in Christianity. But this book in particular, this is like a Bible that was meant for to highlight kind of the artistic, visual, aesthetic qualities of the Bible. It's meant sort of to be a Bible for someone that's never ever read a Bible before. So very much towards the secular world. So they have like quite a lot of like art in this Bible. And can you see the size of this text? Like they, if you've ever read a traditional Bible, a lot of times the Bible itself will have just like a ton of words, but you see here they took a lot of care. Like you can read probably a lot of this on this screen here because it's single column for the actual Bible part. It's meant to be read. It's meant to be basically like spaced out, so it's actually easier to read, almost like a novel. Because if you just try to read through the Bible, especially with no exposure to religion, oh my gosh, can that be very difficult to penetrate. So this Bible, I think, is it's done incredibly well because of how much tender love and care that's been put in it to a bunch of reasons. But a lot of it is the ability to make it accessible and aesthetic. It really uses the medium of the book to bring the Bible, I think, alive. Some comic books do this incredibly well. Some graphic novels do this incredibly well. I love the source material of this so much. I want to love this a lot more because it's clearly got so much invested by everyone that's made this. Like the amount of research is incredible. But yeah, so many of the pages can be like just so dense, and I was sort of holding that other one up as a comparison. So like just as an example, right? I don't know if how easy I'm going to be able to do this, but if I try to turn back to a page where, so if I, can I do this? I think I can do this. This is high quality entertainment here. Can you just see that like the the Bible in like these are right on top of each other, right? The Bible text is like readable. It's like several font sizes larger, even if I'm holding it out here. If I'm holding here, this becomes very readable. You still can barely read what's on this comic from here. Like one of the biggest problems I had was I read these typically at night, like after the kids are down or whatever. And this was hurting my eyes. Like if I was in even a little bit of dark trying to read this font size, like it was actually straining my eyes. Like I was wondering if they had someone actually test read this thing once they printed it. Because like so many of the pages, again, just block after block after block after block after text. And and it's so small to read. Like even now to like read this, it's like I have like 20/20 vision, and I just struggled. Like at some point I'm like, I can't do this. This is an awesome book conceptually. Very cool focus area. Honestly, it's the type of thing we should be talking about a zillion times more. It's insane that there's this entirely polluted area of the world, but I think that the sheer amount of content made it very difficult to read through, and the font size and just how things were laid out like really hurt it for me. Like if this had a tenth of the words and a bit more like show rather than tell, and maybe highlighting with some pictures, I think this could be like an absolutely incredible book. Like I love the topic, but yeah, I think primarily for just how dense it was, how complete it tried to be with its history, and how small and cramped the text was, that like to the point of like hurting my eyes. I just could not read it. I made it a rule, if I can't finish the book, it automatically kind of gets a readability of 1, unfortunately. And then for the X Factor, I still think it's such a cool, innovative concept. Like there's not, once in a while I get a graphic novel with real world pictures, but I think this one, for the parts that I read, it felt the most, I don't think I've seen the real world pictures of like sort of strangers undergoing this situation as much as like some books that have pictures of their family scattered throughout it. This feels much more of like truly like telling like a country, several regions' histories through this really interesting form, and just again the focus on environmental issues. Beautiful. Hadn't seen that in any graphic novel I reviewed yet. But yeah, the readability unfortunately really colors this whole thing. I'd love to see this book just done in a different, like do this thing, again, this is not going to happen, but like this book again in a more readable version I think would be amazing. But anyway, I think if you really love environmentalism and you haven't really read graphic novels and you're used to reading just like straight up textbooks or novels about this will probably feel like such a nice reprieve and like a way better accessible point potentially than like a pure textbook. But I think someone coming from the graphic novel world, this was tough to get through. And again, just like maybe I hope I don't need glasses now, but yeah, it was like truly straining my eyes. But anyway, overall toxic Tropics. I'll leave it there. Still worth a pickup, I think, especially for those interested more in the topic and the region, maybe with their own connection to it. But yeah, I'll leave it there.